The Capital Forum is an exchange of emerging views and cues from leaders in the realms of politics, business, finance, healthcare, and law. The Capital Forum.
Good morning. This is Rajesh and Mehra, your host for the 60-minute first edition of the Capital Forum. The Capital Forum is a proud presentation of GTV, which is Global Television Network. Our other TV shows are Chitramala at 11 a.m., Salam India at 12:30 p.m., and Facets of Religions of India at 1 p.m. Here on the Capital Forum, we will feature politics, business transactions, law, healthcare, finance, and the leaders in these fields will keep you updated in today's day and time. We will start our show today with the Washington Current Review. This will be hosted by Mr. Frank Islam, who is the CEO and chairman of FI Investment Group located in Tysons Corner, Virginia. His guest today is Mr. Sam Arora, who is a well-known Maryland delegate. Let's move the sets and get these two gentlemen rolling.
This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Sam Arora. Sam is a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, and he's going to talk about trade, investment, legislations, and commerce. And Sam is a good friend of mine, and he has been and continues to be a source of inspiration to all of us. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for what you do for our country.
Frank, thanks for having me. It's really nice to sit next to
And thank you for coming.
You bet. My pleasure.
We appreciate that very much. Now, you just went to India with, if I remember correctly, with Governor O'Malley.
That's right. That's right.
And you represented the great state of Maryland, where I live.
Yes, indeed.
Tell me all about it.
Sure.
Tell me what happened, what kind of investment occurred, what kind of commerce, what kind of trade, and what did Governor O'Malley got from India?
Yeah, I tell you, it was a wild trip. We went.
It was a wild trip.
End of November, beginning of December. It was a 5-day blitz. We did Hyderabad, Mumbai, and Delhi. We hit not only other companies, or introduced Maryland and Indian companies together, but we also talked to a lot of government officials, beginning to open the door to doing business in India for Maryland companies. As you know, India is growing at an explosive rate. This is a huge opportunity for Maryland companies, and we went to help grease those skids.
Grease those skids.
That's right.
So did you get anything in return when you came back here?
Yeah, we brought back just in those 6 days, we brought back about $65 million.
$65 million.
1 week. And that's just the beginning.
That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
So do you see a lot of hope and opportunity for the state of Maryland, and especially if so, in what areas?
Sure.
I know pharmaceutical products and health services,
Absolutely.
Those are pretty good, and IT. So what area do you think you see a brighter horizon in terms of relationship between India and United States, and in particular the state of Maryland?
Sure, and you know that Barack Obama said, our president, said that the partnership between India and the U.S. will be the defining partnership of the 21st century.
He sure did say that.
He did, and part of that's going to be trade. So Maryland, we have the highest percentage of PhDs and graduate degreed people in the country. So we are at a competitive advantage for the innovative technology and sort of high-tech sector. So we're talking biotechnology, IT, but really even some brick and mortar stuff. Some of the deals we made were with construction companies. So we really are opening doors to great mutual gain for India and Maryland.
You receive a good reception from the people who are what I consider a New Delhi elite.
You know, many people, not surprisingly, had never heard of Maryland.
Never heard of the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
Did you tell them it's right across the river from Washington, D.C.?
There you go. And when we told them we're next to Washington, D.C. and the federal regulatory agencies, and we have the Port of Baltimore, a deep water port if you want to ship stuff, eyes were open, and they say, we would like to do business with you. Please introduce us to your company. So we made those direct connections.
That's great. That's a wonderful thing to do. You did a great service to our country. It was
Thank you.
Great state of Maryland. As you know, there are 3 Indian Americans in the Maryland House of Delegates. You just mentioned Kumar Barve, who went with you.
That's right, yeah.
Aruna Miller, who also went over
Yes.
there, and you. So what's it like to be, you are first an American, and then you are Indian American.
That's right.
Yeah. And you love this country, you care deeply about this nation, and you serve our nation. So the question is, what's it like to be 3 of you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a lonely voice in the wood?
You know, Maryland has more Indian Americans in its legislature than any other state. We're the only one to have more than one. It's quite nice. I think Delegate Aruna Miller and I have benefited greatly from the mentorship of our majority leader, Kumar Barve. And you know, we always joke that when 2 of us are together, that's quorum. That's a majority of the Indian American caucus. We're also good friends, the 3 of us, and I think that has served each of us well.
So, but you also represent Indian American community.
Yes.
So do you talk about the success of the Indian American community in the state of Maryland and what they can do to help the Governor O'Malley?
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. I think the reason you see 3 Indian Americans in our legislature is because of the success of the Indian American community. There are very successful entrepreneurs like yourself, Frank,
well, thank you.
And physicians and a number of different sectors. And I think having Indians in leadership, in government leadership, is a symptom of that success. And I think what we do, in addition to representing our constituents in our communities, we also represent the Indian community as a greater entity. And I tell Indians around the state, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. I feel like, in a way, we're family.
And what district do you represent in the state of Maryland?
Absolutely. I'm District 19, which is Central Montgomery County.
Central Montgomery County.
That's right.
So what's your email address so people can contact you,
Great
Sam?
idea. Anyone can contact me by emailing info@samaurora.com.
I hope you guys got it. That's wonderful. As you probably know, the Indian American community is very active right now in the politics.
Yes.
So they're getting a seat on the table. So they make sure their voices are heard. And there are 2 Indian American governors, Nikki Haley,
Right.
as well as Bobby Jindal, one from Louisiana, one from the state of North Carolina. Both are Republicans. So, and there are a lot more Indian Americans running for the Congress as well,
Right.
and legislation. How do you see the future of Indian in government and politics looks like it?
I tell you, that's a great question, Frank. And we're seeing Indians running for office at greater numbers than we ever have before and succeeding. And I think that's also a symptom of the maturation of the Indian American community. Gosh, just look on TV. You can't turn on a primetime show without seeing an Indian American character. And they're not the stereotypes anymore. They're just normal Americans. And I think the more Indians are perceived as average Americans, the more success we'll see. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an Indian American maybe president in the not too distant future.
And I'm sure the people that we're talking about, Nikki Haley, as well as the Governor Jindal, there could be good potential resources for America, as well as they can represent our country, and there could be a candidate for the president in the near future.
It's possible, and yeah.
It is possible. Look at the story of President Obama.
That's a great, yeah.
That's a great story. That's something that we can look up and say, you know what, he made it, I can make it too.
Yeah, and it's good to have, I think, Democrats and Republicans who are Indian American, because it shows we're not just of one mind, but we are a community, and we have different, different views, different opinions.
But we all have a shared goals, shared responsibility, and shared sacrifices.
That's
correct?
right. Well said.
We are all Americans.
That's right.
Whether we are Republicans, Independent, or Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
We are all working together for our constituency, for our country. We love and care deeply.
Yes, well said.
So now that you're House of Delegates, you go there, and what are the biggest issues that's facing the Maryland this year? In addition to that, since when you're on the same topic discussing with it, what have been your success in terms of legislations where you have made your mark?
Right, as you
How
know,
are you about to make the mark?
Oh, yeah. Well, as you know, Maryland, like many states, is suffering fiscally. We're having a hard time with our budget. We have to close a $1 billion gap, and that is going to be the biggest issue facing us. So what I'm working on are closing some of our tax loopholes and pushing forward legislation that will create jobs. I'm also, as an attorney, I sit on the House Judiciary Committee, so I focus also on public safety. You'll see me this year introducing bills to require the use of seatbelts in vehicles, which we do somewhat in Maryland, but not fully, and also get guns out of the hands of dangerous criminals.
So creating the jobs, let's talk about, which is a very important right now for our nations. What kind of things state of Maryland is involved in creating the jobs?
Right. Now, part of it's going to be through tax structure, and that's going to be tough.
So giving incentive.
Absolutely.
Do you have any plans or policies possibly talking about in terms of the tax reform also, the corporate tax reform and the personal tax reform as well?
That's going to be on the table. Now, Governor O'Malley just put forward a budget that really squeezes the middle class, unfortunately, and that was one way to solve our budget gap, but I think all options are on the table right now is what I'm hearing. What I would like to see is a tax code that is fair, something that allows people to thrive and helps us to close the gaps in our budget that we have. And part of it's also going to be helping get out of the way when government can let businesses like biotechnology firms thrive, and giving tax credits to incentivize them to go out and be creative. That's a good step. And I'm working to help reauthorize our biotech tax credit in Maryland as a co-sponsor.
You're getting some traction?
I think we're hearing a lot of people getting on board with that.
Yeah. What will you be working on this legislative session?
Well, now, in addition to the seatbelt and gun bills I mentioned, I'm also trying to close a loophole in our business trust law, which allows millions of dollars each year to escape taxation in a bit of a shelter that is just inadvertent. When we drafted the original law creating this tax code, we forgot 4 words. And because of that, millions of dollars have gone uncollected. And I think that's one step I'll be taking.
And what is that 4 word we're talking about here?
Federally adjusted gross income.
Federally adjusted gross
We
income.
forgot to define that.
You did not define that.
Well, I guess this stems back since 1996. We just have never been able to tax it in Maryland, and we surely intended to. So it ended up being a loophole, and it seems sort of silly, Frank, because it's a small bill, but $1 million here, $1 million there, and pretty soon it adds up to real money, doesn't it?
No question about that. So those are issues that you're currently working on the legislative sessions. Is the session active right now?
That's right, yes. The sessions began, I believe, January 11th, and it's going on until mid-April. So we 90-day session in Maryland.
So is this a full-time job for you to be there between this January to April?
I tell you, it ends up being a very full-time. I mean, I start working around 7 or 8 in the morning and stop working about 10 or 11 in the evening. So it can be very demanding during that period. Now, when we go after April, it's technically a part-time job, but it's one of those ones that it's about 40 hours a week during the off-season.
Is that right?
Yeah.
40 hours a week?
Yeah.
And during the session, it's about like, what, 80 hours a week?
I'd say it's more like 80 hours. And I tell you, there are so many good, hard-working men and women, not just the members, the elected members, but those staff. Many of those people are quite young, and this is some of their first experiences in government, and they keep the Maryland government running by their hard work.
Those civil servants you're talking about.
That's right, yes.
They definitely keep the machine grinding.
Yes, they do.
And churning, right? Now, we hear a lot of competition between Maryland and Virginia, Sam. And sometimes Virginia does win because they give a lot of incentives for the companies to locate here. So how's Maryland doing in terms of competition?
I tell you, Frank, we could be doing a lot better. And
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes we don't have to go after the same fish that Virginia is going after. Maryland.
Right. You have a discriminator. And that's what you should be talking about. There's something you can do that Virginia cannot do.
I think, Frank, that's exactly right. And I think we are better poised than Maryland to go after the biotechnology community.
Exactly.
Not just in Virginia. We should take it from North Carolina, from California. Maryland's a great place to live. As you know, you live in Maryland, we live there. We can be attracting these companies. I think we need to be trying a heck of a lot harder.
In addition to giving incentive, you have a discriminator, you got the workforce, you got the skilled workforce, you got the most productive labor force.
Exactly right.
And plus the fact you have the people who got the skills, as you mentioned, the PhDs and masters, that the Virginia, in some cases, lacks it.
And in addition to that, we have the #1 public education system in the entire U.S. in Maryland. For the 4th year in a row, we're ranked #1. People want to move to our state to send their kids to our schools.
What about these taxes that Virginia talks about? We have lower taxes and Maryland has higher taxes.
Now that's true. Now Marylanders demand a high level of service, so we do have a fair share of taxes being paid. And I think one thing we're doing this year is looking at how to tax most fairly.
Good.
And not penalize those who can take it least.
Well, thank you very much,
Frank,
Sam, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciated that.
I love being here.
Thank you what you do for our nation, for our country.
Thank you.
And that is our show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week. Thank you for watching.
Coming up next, we have business and immigration law updates. As the world turns, there are often drastic changes within business transactions, rules, regulations, and legal matters. To keep us abreast with these movements, Mr. Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm will take the lead. The Khurana Law Firm is located in Rockville, Maryland. Along with Attorney Khurana in dialogue is Dr. Rajesh Mehra. Together, these two professionals will focus on visa numbers, worldwide quota, priority dates, and the visa bulletin. Let's join them.
Good morning. This is Dr. Rajesh Mehra. Welcome to the Capital Forum. I am so delighted that you've decided to join us this morning. I am also very excited and delighted to have in our studios this morning Attorney Khurana. Attorney Khurana has the Khurana Law Firm. Now, we all know that there are a lot of attorneys in the area, but Attorney Khurana specializes in business and immigration law. Attorney Khurana, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mehra.
Good. How have you been? Haven't seen you in a while.
I know, it has been a while.
You've been hiding.
Great. Oh, no, not
You've not
really.
been hiding.
Busy
Okay.
in business, busy in practice.
Well, that's how it is, right? We all have to pay our bills.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, immigration is a very hot topic these days. Everywhere you turn, from politics to, of course, a lot of our audience is very concerned about it. Tell me, are there any numerical limitations of the green card or immigration visa numbers in 1 year?
And Dr. Mehra, first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to come on this show. I'm really grateful to you and your company. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
You have always been very kind to me, especially and my law firm. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is a very good question, Dr. Mehra, when you're talking about the numerical limits on the number of green cards or immigrant visa petitions. Of course, as you know, everybody wants to come to the United States.
Of course.
This has been there for the last 50 years or so, and the queue of the people is getting longer and longer every day. So that's why we have to talk about limitations of green card numbers. There are mainly two categories. Is employment-based category, which has 140,000 green card numbers available every fiscal year.
Okay.
So when I use the term fiscal year for the benefit of audience, I would like to clarify this fiscal year starts as from October 1st and ends September 30th every year. So 140,000 numbers for employment-based category and 226,000 numbers are available for family-based category. So when I'm talking about family-based category, like if somebody wants to sponsor his
Their
parents,
wife or parents.
spouses, or children, or siblings, so these are all covered under
The family.
family-based
Okay.
category. And the good thing is, if any numbers are not utilized or underutilized under the family-based category, those can be transferred to employment-based category.
I
So
see.
that's the advantage.
I want to interrupt you for just 1 second. I want to make sure the audience understands that when you talk about these numbers, that means for the whole world, right?
Yes. for
Not
the whole-
not India, not
No.
Pakistan, not Bangladesh, no, right?
You're
So
100%
people that are immigrating or getting a green card from anywhere in the world.
You are 100%
Okay.
right.
Because I want to make sure that's because you can really those numbers sound good, but when you look at the world, it's just not a lot of numbers.
No, that's a very good observation, Dr. Mehra. Yes.
Okay, so do some of the categories not fill? So they do transfer this? I mean, it's hard to believe that 140,000, whatever you said, wouldn't fill for employment because everybody's trying to get a job here or being sponsored by a company.
You know, Dr. Mehra, in fact, what happens is sometimes there are processing delays.
Okay.
So because of that, either 140,000 numbers which are reserved for employment-based categories, these may not be utilized. And likewise, sometimes because of processing delays, numbers available for family-based categories may not be utilized. But if unutilized numbers are there for employment-based category, those cannot be used for family-based.
I see. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, but
family can go to employment,
Yes.
but employment can go over to family.
Yes.
Got it.
That's very true.
Now, within the employment category, are there restrictions of professions? Or can you have a doctor, lawyer, and an engineer?
Well, there are different types of preference categories. So there would be highly qualified people, like I would say people who are holding PhDs
Okay.
or doctorate degrees, and they are exceptionally qualified people. So they can be covered so-called under EB1 category.
Gotcha.
And for EB1 category, again, there is a separate queue. And EB1 category is current for all the nationalities from any part of the world, people who are coming.
Okay.
And then we move on to EB2, EB3, EB4, and EB5. So we have a different queue for each type of
Different
ca-
subcategories
ca-
that
category.
determine.
But the good thing is, like I said, EB1, EB2, EB3, if these have their own priority dates, these priority dates cannot be used for EB4 and EB5.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to the worldwide quota, as we just said, is a foreign national subject to per country limitation? In other words, does India have 15,000 and Africa or Nigeria have 18,000?
Dr. Mehra, this is really a very good and pertinent question. The reason is, as we all know, that when we are talking of the employment-based category, now all these IT consultants, now majority of them are coming from India.
Of course.
And second number, of course, goes to China.
Uh-huh.
So they would have monopolized all
The whole numbers.
numbers. So that's why, in order to contain that monopolization of the numbers, so there is a country ceiling, which is 7% at this point. But
Interesting.
yeah. So there is a long queue for all these IT people and other professionals who are coming from India and China. But the good thing is that our administration is concerned about the long queue, and
They're speeding up the process.
in fact, they are thinking about removing the ceiling or readjusting the ceiling. Let's see how things work out.
I see.
But these are in the offing.
Yeah. And has something happened in the last few months? This is sort of corollary to that has sped up this thing? Because I noticed that in the last 3 months, there's been an uprise of people trying to get green cards.
Well, Dr. Mehra, nobody else knows better than you do, because you do medical reports for the people who have become due for filing
Right.
last stage of the green card, which we call here adjustment of status.
Okay.
And you are 100% right. It has happened. So the crowd which you see at your clinic, that speaks about
Right.
this process being moving forward. The reason is, as far as I understand, there were 12,000 numbers which were unutilized for EB1 category.
Ah.
Like at the very outset, I said those numbers can be transferred to EB2 or EB3 category. So, State Department took a decision to transfer those 12,000 numbers to Indian nationals.
That's why all of a sudden we see all this influx of IT things.
Yes, so that's why, just about a year back, the priority date was March of 2006. And in a period of 1 year, it has jumped by 4 years.
Right.
And as of today, the priority date is January 2010. So all those applications which were filed up to December 31st, 2010, now they can file for adjustment of status. That's why
That's why people in your office is busy, right?
Yes.
Because you must
Your
be.
office is busy,
Yeah,
my office is
that's
busy
right.
too.
It has to be. Now, what is this priority date that you speak of? I'm not clear on, and I don't know if our audience really understands, because we often hear about it, and it takes many years. But can this be current, or does it change, or what exactly does it mean?
Dr. Mehra, what happens is, as we said, that demand for green cards is more than the numbers available, because we said that 140,000 numbers are available every fiscal year.
Right.
So since the demand is more than that, so there is a kind of rationing of green card numbers. I'm using this term.
Right.
So the priority date could be best defined as the date when a person registers himself or herself by filing an application with the Immigration Department or USCIS. So the moment you file an application or petition for some immigration benefit, so if it is properly signed and the necessary fee has been paid to the USCIS, they would issue a receipt notice.
Got
And
it.
this receipt notice would have a priority date.
Got it.
So priority date, like I said, this is the date when you register yourself for some particular immigration benefit. And that's the deciding date in the queue.
How long it'll take to go through the system.
Exactly. So first come, first serve.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how life is, right?
Yes, exactly.
Early bird gets the worm. You have
Yeah.
to get up at 5 o'clock, start your day, and then the rest of the day you can do things.
Yeah. So that's why in this context, Dr. Mehra, I use that priority date is very important.
Excellent. Well, all these things you're saying makes me think this is much more complex than meets the common man's eye, you know. There's
this
a lot
is
of
a-
detailed.
Yes, Dr. Mehra, this is a complex system, especially when people have to wait too long for their turn to come up, and people's circumstances change in the meantime. So many things have happened, and unfortunately for Indian nationals and Chinese nationals,
It's a long wait.
it has been a long wait. You know, when we go down to the next stage, which we call EB3 category, like people who had just obtained bachelor's degree and no 5 years experience, based on that kind of experience and qualification, which petitions were filed, the priority date is 2002.
Wow,
You know,
that is amazing.
So
yeah.
people have been waiting for the last
8 years, 9 years, yeah.
So that's a very unfortunate part, and I think administration has got to do something, because when we look at Canada, Australia, and Europe, now they are providing very competitive opportunities
Really?
to Indian nationals and Chinese nationals.
So that you bring up a very interesting point. Statistically, then, obviously, because of what you just said, is there a large influx of multinationals going to those countries, Australia, Canada, and
You know, I won't say many multinationals, but the trend which I have seen in my immigration practice in the United States is when people lose their patience because they have been waiting too
so long, right?
or they just fail to comply with the immigration laws, because all these people who file for employment-based immigration benefit applications, now they have to be in a valid status.
I see.
Now, if they somehow lose their valid status, now they have to go back. Otherwise, they will start incurring unlawful presence.
Right.
Then they decide to go to Canada, just next door. They don't want to go back.
They don't want to go back home. Yeah.
This is the trend which I have been seeing.
Sure. Well, I know that we have limited time, but I want to sneak in one more question. Is what is the visa bulletin and who issues it and how does it get known?
Dr. Mehra, visa bulletin is issued by the State Department, which is located right here in Washington, D.C. And this bulletin is issued by the 10th of the month. So let us say that by 10th of February 2012, if visa bulletin is issued, so it would have priority dates for the coming month.
Got it.
So starting from March 1. So that means from March 1 they could start filing their applications.
Got it. Well, that's been so helpful, and I have so many other questions, but I guess our studio people are telling us that our time's run out. So we better comply and listen to them, right?
I like your
And-
question, Dr. Mehra.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm learning from you because you're the guru about all of this, and I'm just trying to make sure that our audience is going to be knowledgeable. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mehra, for giving me an opportunity to come to your studios.
Yeah, join us again next time when we'll have Attorney Khurana educate us and enlighten us on more topics about business and immigration law.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving along, we will now feature a page called People's Pride. Here you shall meet prominent personalities from around the world who make us proud of who they are. Since this is the debut of People's Pride, Dr. Satish Misra and attorney Aparna Dave will give us an overview of upcoming episodes.
नमस्कार, सतीश मिश्रा। इस नए शो में पीपल्स प्राइड और इस नए टीवी शो में भी कैपिटल फार्म में आप सबका स्वागत है। आई रियली कांग्रेचुलेट ग्लोबल टेलीविजन नेटवर्क and Mrs. Nilma Mehra for bringing this show to you. I know that you will enjoy it. As I said, the theme of this show is people's pride. That means we will talk about people and what makes them proud. With me is the show's co-host, attorney Aparna Dave. Welcome, Aparna ji, on this show. And before she starts, Aparna Dave is an immigration attorney, and I have known her for over 20 years. Besides being a successful attorney, she is also a community-oriented person, and it has been very active in several organizations. Aparna ji, you want to add something to?
Sure. Namaste to all the viewers today. It is in fact an honor for me to be here on this show today with Dr. Misra. I'm not here, as an attorney. I just want to make that very clear. I am attending this show, and I'm co-hosting this show as I feel it's a matter of pride. It is a matter of pride to be on this show because the focus of our show is going to be very different, where we are going to be calling in various different speakers who would be excelling in their areas, and these speakers would be quote-unquote the role models of our community. And I would like Dr. Misra to expand on this show and what his focus and his plan is. So Dr. Misra, if you can please tell our viewers, what are you trying to achieve and what are you trying to accomplish through this show?
Thank you, Aparna, for asking that. I have been thinking about it. What does make people have a pride? And the people's pride has several components, and we will very briefly talk about some components. And the very first one is heritage. Heritage is a very important component that brings pride in us. I have known people like some time ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I watched a movie called Roots, where African American wanted to really get to know where they are coming from. Our children, second generation, they want to know what their roots are. In other words, they are not confined to us, to parents. They want to know their dada-dadi, they want to know their fathers. So roots are very important part of pride that brings people not only together, but very proud of what their heritage is, where they come from, their village and things like that. So,
Dr. Misra, can you expand on this? When you're saying roots, how would you make our viewers aware of their roots? What do you plan to do?
Well, I think our viewers, especially the parents who are here, should make sure that the information is communicated to younger generation. It's very, very important to communicate that information. Otherwise, information that I have in my heart will be lost after I'm gone. So it's very important for me and you and for everybody who's watching it to communicate the proper idea. And then roots also, heritage also has different component, something called culture.
Okay.
The culture, actually there are 5 things that make up a culture. Very important. The first one is language. Language, भाषा. What makes us to learn faster? हमारे लिए जैसे भाषा थी हमारी हिंदी, मातृभाषा. आपके लिए आपकी भाषा थी गुजराती. तो हम लोग बहुत comfortable थे. And it's not only comfort level, but also about reading our scriptures, also about knowing about roots. You cannot know about your roots unless you can read scriptures in that language that they are written in. The second part is very important component of the culture is music. Music moves people, even though music is independent of language, but still it has language in it. Now, like when I hear classical music or vocal music or something like that, I feel much more comfortable, much more soothing, and my children also do the same thing. And I'm pretty sure at your home,
yes, we all do that too.
Yeah,
correct,
it's same
absolutely.
thing.
Yes.
And then third component that is important in culture is food. What kind of food we eat? We can eat American, we can eat Indian, we can eat Mexican, things like that. But what really satisfies, तृप्ति किससे मिलती है, संतुष्ट किससे होते हैं?
Like हमारे कल्चर में कौन सा ऐसा फूड है जो हमें अच्छा लगता है? आप ये कहना चाहते हैं? I mean, what do you mean by food?
It's very independent of the culture. It's actually comes down to a small society, community.
Okay.
That makes a very, culture is very broad term, but food also defines. Like if you go to India, UP, Punjab, Gujarat, it's different food, but that way we can identify that food is ethnic to Gujarat. You come to USA, hot dogs, hamburger, and things like that.
So you identify the food with the type of people.
You are
Okay.
identified. That's true. Then the clothes we wear. See, you are wearing a beautiful dress. I can right away know that you come from India.
From India, correct.
I'm wearing something which is not traditional Indian, but now it has become traditional. After so many, traditional is like kurta pajama. But you do identify person like Punjabi dress. People are identified by that. Clothes that they are wearing or they like to wear.
Okay, okay.
As preferably like to. Then the fifth component is religion.
Mm-hmm.
Religion is not one particular sect. Religion is something that gives you inner peace, that takes you to a higher space, that you sit down and meditate and yoga and things like that, and that gives you the peace, basically.
But then don't you think in the religious aspect of it, you would also want our viewers to know, for example, in India, we celebrate a lot of different festivals. So I would also feel that it would be a good idea to introduce our viewers to why these different festivals are celebrated.
Very important, very,
because
very
we celebrate
important,
Diwali, but people don't know why we celebrate Diwali.
That's right.
Why we celebrate Holi. So I think we may need to emphasize on that fact also, that what is in our scriptures and in our culture that makes us celebrate these holidays, and what is the significance of these particular holidays in our life.
Exactly. We will do that, and we'll bring in some important guests and younger generation and youth to talk about their experiences related to festivities. इसे we are all, हम लोग उत्सव प्रिय हैं, जितने भी भारतीय हैं बहुत उत्सव प्रिय हैं. हर तरीके को कोई उत्सव कोई बहाना चाहिए.
हाँ, कैसे सेलिब्रेट करना है.
या चाहे घर में बर्थडे हो या वेडिंग एनिवर्सरी हो या कोई भी है, बहाना चाहिए हमको
किस तरह से
सेलिब्रेट करने का. तो और ये फेस्टिवल्स जो हैं विच आर डिफाइंड इन द कल्चर, होली, दिवाली और व्हाटएवर, पंजाबी लोहरी एंड इसी सब उनका रियल मीनिंग सिग्निफिकेंट टू आवर नेक्स्ट जनरेशन वो हमें बताना है.
ओके. और आप क्या, what is your second objective of the show?
No, it's not second, it's role models. We have heroes in our life. There are so many unsung heroes in our life, and what they have contributed to us and to people's pride, to my pride, to your pride. So we will bring those two role models that have influenced our behavior.
Okay, so role model you mean could be any member of the community who's contributed to the community, whereby other people can see with their contributions and learn from them?
Are people who have benefited from that contribution, like our youth. Youth may not be accepted as role model, even though they might be role model, but they have benefited. And I want to hear their experiences. We should hear their experiences. And then we will also bring in some leaders. They could be political, they could be government, they could be community leaders, they could be business, because all of them make a contribution to the way we live.
Absolutely.
Political leaders, they can make our lives easy, they can make our life very difficult.
Correct.
Raise taxes and things like that, make different immigration rules. And community leaders, they can help us, and mostly they help us. And business leaders, they, how they view the community activity. And then one more aspect that I think is very important is our teachers.
Absolutely.
Our guru.
Yes, because we learn from them.
Yeah, because they have made a much larger impact in the way we think, in the way we live. And then gurus are spiritual teachers, saints, rishis, munis, or even scriptures. So we have to bring in some people who are expert in those, and some like youths who have learned from these people.
So I think by teachers, you may also want to include not just spiritual and religious leaders, but I would say teachers who are teaching kids languages, teachers who are giving them knowledge about dance, Indian dance, Indian vocal music, instruments. I believe all these people are teachers who are contributing in some form or the other to the society. I just would want to add one huge thing to this show is that this show is for the Indians, the Indian youth who are basically being raised in America. We, the first generation Indians, have come with a lot of this knowledge. But the idea is that we would want a contribution from the youth. So what I would encourage Dr. Misra to do, and this is what my vision is, that we should be inviting the youth to this show who can talk about what they've learned by learning Indian languages. How has that affected their life? Or how has that molded their life? Because we have grown up with this culture. We possibly has never recognized the difference between the Indian culture and American culture because we've lived in India for several years before coming here. But these youth are struggling between two cultures. And I would like to hear their experiences on how they have benefited by the Indian culture and how that has shaped their life and their future better. Because I strongly believe that the kids who are being raised in America are Americans, but their roots would still be Indians. And I strongly believe that all these kids need to have very strong roots because it is extremely important to have strong roots to evolve into successful human beings. Do you agree
Thank
with
you,
me?
Aparna. This is very important. Our youths are actually our pride. If we don't focus on our youth, then our pride is not there at all. So we have to focus on youth. We have to invite them on our show, and they have to tell us what is happening. So this is very important topic that you have brought in, and if somebody wants to get in touch with us, what do you suggest? How do we do that?
I would say that I could give my email address at the end of the show, and definitely send us emails. I would be happy to take in any suggestions because this show is for all of you. It's not for Dr. Misra or for me. And I strongly emphasize the fact that this show is for the young generation. And if they have any contributions to make to the show, we will be very happy to invite them. And we hope to see you all soon.
So this is the key. We invite you all and all audience to give us your input via email or even via telephone calls or even to Neelamaji or even to this TV station, and we will be happy to accommodate the request. Thank you very much. Or namaskar.
Thank you. Namaste.
Please hold on to your heartbeat. Is it pulsating correctly? With this remark, let's enter the new and innovative conversation between Dr. Rajesh Mehra and Dr. Meghal Antani. Dr. Meghal Antani is a well-known interventional radiologist in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Today, these two doctors will discuss the exact causes and treatments of spider veins, or otherwise known as varicose veins. Let's catch up with them now.
Good morning. This is Dr. Rajesh Mehra from Chantilly, Virginia. I am so delighted that you have decided to bring us into your homes this morning. In the last couple of weeks, we have been featuring a very prominent interventional radiologist, Dr. Meghal Antani, and I'm honored to have him again with us this morning to talk about varicose veins. Welcome,
Thank you,
sir.
Dr. Mehra. Pleasure to be here.
Good, good. You had a busy week last week? Quite busy as always. Fantastic. Well, before we get into the treatment of varicose veins, just kind of introduce us to the idea of what varicose veins are.
Varicose veins, Dr. Mehra, are large veins on the leg that occur because of an underlying condition known as venous reflux disease. And with venous reflux disease, the blood travels in the wrong way in the veins of the leg. Normally, the blood should only go upwards. With venous reflux disease, the blood goes backwards or downwards towards the foot. And when that happens, that causes the vein to enlarge and protrude.
Right, and it's a very common disease, as you had mentioned last time.
Absolutely. Seen as many as 20 or 30% of women and as many as 10 to 15% of men, especially women after multiple pregnancies.
Multiple pregnancies and other depending on what occupation,
Sure.
they're standing all day and things like that, right?
Correct.
Now, we delved into some of the other details last time, which I don't want to repeat this week, but so once you diagnose it, once a family doctor diagnoses it, or anybody for that matter, how do you then treat it?
Well, the next step is, of course, we have a good discussion with the patient. There are different treatment options, but historically, varicose veins, and more specifically venous reflux, was treated by a major surgery called vein stripping.
Okay.
And in vein stripping surgery, which was a surgery done in the hospital under general anesthesia, a very involved procedure,
Right.
basically the underlying vein that has the problem of venous reflux, the saphenous vein, was basically removed by the surgeon. And the patient would be bedridden for a long period of time, 4 to 6
Wow.
weeks. It was a very painful procedure, and it would leave one with a bunch of scars up and down the leg. Not very nice. Nowadays, we have a minimally invasive endovascular treatment. It's an outpatient treatment. There's no downtime on the patient. And what it involves is putting in a very thin little tube called a catheter. And we thread that catheter using certain type of x-ray called ultrasound. And we pass that into the saphenous vein, the vein we talked about.
Into the long vein.
Correct. And just pass that catheter in, and basically we pull the catheter out. And as we pull the catheter releases a special type of energy behind it. And that causes the vein to close from inside out. So instead of taking the vein out, or in other words,
You're
closing the
destroying
vein
it.
surgically, we basically close the vein inside out, and that addresses the reflux.
So if there's no vein, no blood's going to pool.
Exactly.
That's sort of the basic idea here.
Correct.
I see. And how is this done? I mean, is this done still in the hospital, or is it done in your office, or how does this work?
Actually, endovenous vein ablation is an outpatient procedure done in the doctor's office. And it takes really about within an hour to do. It's a very quick procedure. There's no downtime on the patient. The patient is back to their
Just
normal
gets up and
activities.
walks out.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That is something. And then is there a recovery? Do they like take a few days off to go to work? Or?
Good question. We're usually asked that, and the answer is not really. I've had people come during their lunch hour from work to have it done. It's a dramatic change from what vein stripping surgery was like.
Amazing. Very interesting. And is there any things that does insurances cover this sort of thing? Or
You'd
is
be
it
surprised, but in most cases, insurance will cover it as long as the patient has symptoms that are attributable to the underlying cause, venous
right?
reflux.
In other words, probably if a 20-year-old comes in with this and just wants to have smoother, prettier legs and it's cosmetic, they may
Correct.
not. But if it's a 50-year-old person, a man or a woman, doesn't matter, and they're causing symptoms,
Yes.
Insurances would cover that.
Yes, that's correct.
Tell us briefly, what does an interventional radiologist do?
Sure. Well, an interventional radiologist is the type of physician who does minimally invasive procedures in the body under X-ray guidance.
Yeah, that means not cutting you open, but sort of with small holes or lasers and other newer techniques be
That's
able
correct.
to do something.
They're all done under radiologic guidance, whether that's ultrasound or fluoroscopy, which is a type of X-ray, or
X-ray.
some other kind of guidance.
Unbelievable. Today we want to talk about PAD. First of all, what does it stand for?
PAD stands for peripheral arterial disease.
Okay, translate in English.
Sure. Peripheral arterial disease refers to the arteries that are found in the legs, or in other words, the periphery of the body. And the leg arteries are subject to conditions such as atherosclerosis, which is a condition basically involving fatty deposits that cause the vessels to narrow.
Okay. And when this happens, what kind of symptoms would a patient come with?
It depends on the severity of the peripheral arterial disease, or PAD, but the classic symptoms of PAD would be cramping or burning in the calf or thigh muscles associated with activity like walking, and that is known as claudication.
Claudication, okay. And so when a patient comes with that, what kind of testing would you do to decide whether this is what he has?
Well, the easiest test really is to feel the person's pulses. The pulses are the vessels that are at the ankles and other areas of the legs, and we can feel the blood flow coursing through the vessels just like you can in your wrist, and that's the pulse.
Okay.
And we can measure the degree of pulse, and that's the easiest way. Next step above that, maybe to take blood pressure readings in the legs and compare that to the arms. That is a simple test known as an ABI, and that just gives us a rough idea of how much blood is going down the legs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all scientific things you're talking about. Different doctors, family doctors, who does this kind of test? Can I do this test, or?
Usually the tests are done by somebody who has some background or expertise in vascular testing or vascular disease.
Okay, so it needs a special kind of thing. And what kind of people or who gets this? Young people, old people gets PAD?
PAD can be seen by a wide range of patients, but classically the person will be between 50 to 70 years of age, and it tends to occur in men a bit more common than women.
So if somebody has sort of blocked arteries in their legs, it's also very possible they may have blocked arteries in their heart and or the brain.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point.
Right, so one finds this, then one really needs to investigate what's going on in other parts of the body.
That is correct.
Are there any medications that can help, or does it always require procedures, which we're going to talk about next time?
There are medications, but before you get to the medication phase, the most important thing with PAD or to prevent it is diet and exercise.
Right, right. But once you've established somebody has it, then do you just always go to a procedure, or
Not
can
at
you
all.
take medicine?
There are medications available for that.
There are medications, okay. Yeah, before we get into the treatment, some of our viewers may not have seen us last time. Tell us a little bit about what is PAD?
Sure. Well, PAD stands for peripheral arterial disease, and basically it involves narrowing or blockages in the arteries which supply the legs, and thereby reducing the blood flow to the legs and causing various symptoms.
And one of them is obviously pain when you're walking or exercising or exerting yourself.
Correct.
So tell us now a little bit about how do you treat this? Are there any medications that can loosen the blood or make the blood go quicker?
Yes, there are. There are medications that can improve the blood flow going down the legs, and those are often the first line of treatment before a more invasive treatment is considered.
And how long does the treatment, or does one have to take those the rest of your life?
It varies person to person, but typically it's recommended to try these circulation improving medications for about 4 to 6 weeks before improvements are seen.
I got you. Now, if medication fails and the person is in pain and when walking, what is the surgical procedure or the non-invasive procedure that can be done?
That's a good question, and historically there wasn't much option. The treatment years ago used to be bypass, where somebody, a surgeon, would have to come in and create a bypass around the blocked area. But now with modern day technology, we have the ability to do procedures minimally invasively. And examples of that would be angiograms and angioplasties.
So these are done in an office or in the hospital?
Well, they can be done in either setting, but the important thing is to be in a setting that's safe, that has adequate life support measures and trained personnel and those sort of things.
So either a hospital or like an outpatient surgery center?
That is correct.
I see. And does insurance usually cover this, or is this considered cosmetic?
No, this is usually covered by insurance because it's a medical problem.
Medical problem. You wouldn't do this just because your legs need to look prettier.
That's correct.
It's because you're having particular symptoms that you want to improve. Are there any other exercises or any other non-surgical things that anybody can do to open up the vein, open up the arteries?
Absolutely. Well, I don't know about opening up the vessels per se, but certainly slowing down the progress of the disease. I think the most important thing to be aware of is good diet and regular exercise.
Good diet and exercise. This is what I talk about all the time. Go back to the basics, right?
Absolutely.
Of good rest, healthy diet, and 4 to 5 times a week exercise.
You got it.
That'll prevent most things. Well, this has been very informative. We want to keep talking about a lot of other topics that I know you want to talk about in the future. So stay tuned, and we will bring you more of Dr. Antani in the upcoming weeks. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Mehra.
This brings us to the end of this first edition of the Capital Forum. I hope you enjoyed our various dialogues. Next week, we will bring you more information to help navigate you through the who's who and what's what of your modern lifestyle. Until next week, I'm Rajesh Mehra, your host of the Capital Forum, signing off from the studios of GTV. Goodbye and so long.